Good morning. Alan and I are going to talk to you this morning about the role of the coach within the analysis process. These are some of the guys that I have worked with and learned from, I suppose, over the years. And the message today is very much maybe what I've learned from these guys. These are guys who absolutely owned the coaching process, owned the analysis, and very much drove it themselves to benefit and develop their own players. I'm at this a while, between rugby and athletics and football and hurling, and I suppose it's funny to reflect on the changes. So since 2002, an analyst was a novelty. We were working off videotapes, whereas now everybody has, the high-class software, and an analyst is integral to the high support team, or the high-performance support team. What we want to ask you today is, a lot of people are doing analysis, but maybe to question the value of what people are doing. Is it really making an impact, or are a lot of people just ticking the box? So maybe to reflect today and to challenge you guys, why are you doing analysis? How does it serve your philosophy? Or are you doing it because, the fella in the next club is doing it, the other county, and they have this fancy software, so we'd need to be doing it? I really want to drill down today as to what you're doing and how it serves you as a coach. So where we're coming from today, the presentation is structured around the feedback that we got from a survey that we did, Alan and myself and Johnny Bradley from the Sports Institute in Belfast. So we looked at a survey and we found that about half of the GAA coaches who responded were using analysis, the other half weren't. And we found also that 87% of people wanted to know more about how to integrate analysis effectively into their coaching. So with that in mind, today we are going to try and structure into 4 sections. So we're going to look at the analysis process, and Alan will give you a lot of examples from elite sport. I'm going to pull those down. Now, and we're going to advice for if you're the 50% of people who are maybe just starting with analysis, we look at where to start. If you are maybe using a lot of analysis, you've all got a handout there, or you should have a handout with a tool in it to help you maybe reflect on your practice to see, are you getting the best from this investment of time and resources? And the last thing I have for you is a little pre-match video compilation example that'll just hopefully set you up for your coffee in the morning. So I'm going to hand you over to Alan to start off.
Okay, thank you. Okay, right, I'd just like to thank GAA for the opportunity to come here and speak. I think we're both passionate about performance analysis and its use, and I think in Ireland it's really only finding its feet. And we're just here, we just want to maybe show you examples of potentially what good looks like and how you'll be able to integrate the service into what you're doing in your, no matter what level of team or athlete that you work with. So as a little bit of an intro to myself, sports science background, University of Limerick, graduated onto a master's eventually, took some time. Then I started working as lab tech. An interesting concept is if you were to take, let's say, analysts working across a variety of sports in Ireland, you put 10 in a room, they might have 10 different pathways into where they are. So, and that's the nature of performance analysis from maybe 10, 12 years ago. Now there's college courses dedicated to it, so there's a lot more dedicated qualifications. So it's just an interesting concept. I was working as technician, no one really doing PA at the time, morphed into the role, found it really interesting, and then morphed into that role at Irish Institute of Sport, where I started working with boxing in about 2007. I was here from a competition a few years ago. The role there really is collecting video to start with. Also work with paracycling, or Paralympic sports, or track cycling. Really exciting sport for anyone. I don't know if you have any experience of the sport, but really exciting and very measurable. Lends itself to what we do really well. And swimming as well, also the same. Fixed distance, time-based sport lends itself. Actually, this picture is from the position for the Paralympic Games. You can see, for anyone who maybe is an analyst here, you'll see how tight that space is. You only have space for a tripod, the laptop sits underneath it, and you've got 10, 12 people around you. Now there was probably another 30 rows of seats behind me. That was probably the best atmosphere, one of the best atmospheres I've ever been in. Okay, I've had an opportunity to work with some of Ireland's most experienced and passionate coaches, and I've learned so much from them. My starting point really, I find, is that they've probably forgotten more about the sport than I'll ever know, And if you start with that position, then you're always not going to second guess what sometimes that's an important starting point, because from there you learn from them, and eventually you might come to question and challenge, but really it's their experience. It's a coaching tool at essence. What I'd like to say on my kind of mantra is that idea of making performance measurable in all aspects of doing it reliably and consistently. Now I'll deal with, there are some elements that you just can't measure, and we're conscious of that, but if we can try and live by that 3 words, and that's kind of my day job, which is a really fortunate position to be in. So performance, in my idea, is, can you just click on that? Yeah. So I kind of think it's a jigsaw. It's made up of a whole lot of different pieces. Break it down to its pieces, improve any of those pieces, and the performance itself should improve. Simple theory, but I think it works as a good basis. Now what we're really looking to do at that point really is informed decision making, and that's ultimately one of our key points is it's all about action. So if we look at the analysis process, it begins here with the coach's philosophies and principles. It's a coaching tool. And it's important that the analysts, the coach, you never forget that. So they own it. They've got to drive it. So the first sit down with the coach, I'll talk about what's their, say, in a team sport environment, what's their system of play, what are their principles. From that then you build your performance indicators. So the variables you're looking to measure. That drives your metrics. From that then you define those. You sit down and you talk through, well, you talk through the detail of each of those indicators and make sure there's no assumptions from the analyst. In this particular case, I don't see a problem with an analyst not really knowing a sport to start with. Now it'll take him a little bit of time to get up to speed, but it's important that an analyst doesn't come in and work with a coach and has their own preconception of what they think is correct. So coach philosophy, principles, define your indicators, then you move to the phase where, now this is a little bit of a simplified version for the purposes of this talk, but then you move on to where your athletes and team perform. So if you haven't got that first bit and had that conversation, you're probably starting not on solid ground. So team performance, you move on to video data collection, the analysis. This really is what the analyst owns, this sort of area. But as you can see, it's influenced by the coach's philosophies and principles. You could put 10 analysts in a room working in rugby, for example. The core metrics they're collecting are probably the same. There's pieces on the peripheral which won't be, but won't be the same. But they're meeting the coach's need, and that's dependent on the style of play. And Denise will go into that a little bit more detail. The metrics fit what you're looking to, the style of play you're looking to execute. The important piece is that analysis, as really that's the coach's bread and butter. Analysis is built out of probably primarily the role of performance analysis, built out from the development of technology. As the athlete's level of performance or competitive level increases, but then the drive for information there's a greater drive for that information. Then that's where the analyst steps in. But it's always a coaching tool at its essence. So those 2 pieces, video collection, analysis, they're owned by that analyst, but influenced by the coach's philosophies. Then the output from that is that the analyst will display this information in the best way that can be fed to the coach, whether it be, video is simple, but it's maybe tailored to what they're looking for, whatever platform you want to put it on, how are you going to display the stats around it, how do you look at changes and trends within that, and then that goes to the coach. The coach diagnoses and leads the feedback to the team, from which an action plan is developed. That all sounds pretty simple, but it's based on that first piece, that idea of the coach philosophy, what are you looking to collect, and making sure that the analyst is aware of that from the outset. Okay, so how is this used in boxing? So just to talk about, I suppose, what my responsibilities are. We passed out a handout on that. We kind of have an idea of there's some pieces as a reflective tool, which we'll deal with in more detail, and some of that as well. There's the roles and responsibilities, and this idea of a service level agreement, which we'll deal with in a little bit more detail. But that's kind of an idea of what I would collect, what I do. But so basis, maintain the bout catalogue. We have every major international competition since 2007 at our fingertips, which is really, really important. And as we move towards Rio, it's important that we keep that fresh. So I think going into London, there was 5 male boxers. I think there was 126 potential opponents. You don't know till the morning of the draw who you get. So you need to keep that catalogue fresh. And I think we had footage in about 120 of those 125. So that was good for us. We want to do the same again. Facilitating the post-competition debrief, I'll go into that in a little bit more detail, and that's kind of the core of what I do from the day-to-day, week-to-week activity. specific competition support around, really that's kind of collecting and organising the footage to a large degree, because if you say you could have 6 boxers on in one day, they might finish at 11, there's a weigh-in the next morning at 7 o'clock, you could have someone back in the ring at 2. So there's a very short window for the coach to sit down and review. So my role really is collecting fresh footage, having it available for him for when he wants to sit down and watch it, and they'll do that before their contest, develop their tactics and whatever. Okay, monitor scoring patterns of major competitions. I'll give you an example of that. And the last one is that idea of motivational videos. We put these together primarily with the psychologist. And say, for example, at the previous World Championships, when Michael Conlon and Joe Ward were going into the final, they had a customised video for themselves, which had footage, messages from the previous semi-final, which was just 2 days before. So that's the sort of stuff we can do, and it really helps to focus their mind. So key principles, and this is really important. We talk about principles of coaches, but I think analysts and people who are professional in what they do, they have principles as well, because you're looking to develop a system. So mine and within the sports, within the sport team, the idea of continuous performance improvement. Really simple in a time-based sport. Sometimes I look at like in athletics or swimming, and actually it works really well. You improve by decreasing your time. In a dynamic combat sport, it's a lot more difficult. Same in a dynamic team sport. Invasion team sport is a lot more difficult. So we have methods of monitoring that progress. I'll show you examples of that. Coach drives it. That's our key message today. Very, very simple. Systematic. If something's worthwhile doing now, it's worthwhile doing in 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years' time. So we developed the post-competition debrief and have been using it since probably just before Beijing. And it's followed a relatively similar format. Now how the information displayed has changed quite significantly. But we still do the same format because it's the right thing to do, systematic. We measure output, and this is really important. We control output but not outcome. And that's really important in how we deliver, and that's always the case. So unfortunately in some cases in the sport that I work with, you can perform to your best and you still lose. But that's important that someone comes away knowing that they performed to their best, because that's all we ever ask for. Tools used to answer better questions, compliments coaches' intuitive knowledge, that idea of they've forgotten more than I'll ever know, sharpens the post-competition debrief. We're looking for their feedback as we go. Okay, yeah, all right. So ultimately, the role of the support team, prepare the boxers to be at their best when it matters. That's the ultimate. Now, if you can walk away from every major competition saying that, that's success in my eyes. You can do no more. The result looks after itself. And that's really important. We don't focus on the outcome, but on the process and the output. Okay, very briefly, I'm just going to show you an introduction of round score analysis. It's just the scoring system, 10 nines as it is in pros, 3 3-minute rounds. The judge gives a 10 or a 9 or 10 to the boxer they think won that round. Okay, there's a few elements we look within this. The first one I'm going to deal with, how many boxers win a first round and go on to win the contest. So this is from the European Games in Baku just last summer. And what we look at here now, there's a lot of information on this. So I'm just going to go on a few key points. If we look at the bottom, our average is 81%. 81% of first round winners go on to win a contest. So it's pretty important you win that one. But look at the ranges. If we go from 75 kilos, we have 96. So only one boxer lost the first round and went on to win it. That's really important. But then you go to super heavy and 61. So we monitor these trends and see how they change. The core 80% hasn't changed actually since Beijing. Come through a changing scoring patterns, and that hasn't changed, interestingly enough. But so we monitor that, and that's a key message. Win that first round. Okay, so format of the debrief is after international competition, like this is the key element, I suppose, of what I do for my day-to-day activities. Coach picks a contest, I'll sit down, analyse it, we have a template, and that takes anywhere from about 2 to 3 hours, depending on the type of boxer. So it's a quite labour-intensive process, but the depth is there's a lot of depth in it. The analyst then, we pick a day, we sit down, the analyst goes through, facilitates that debrief. 20 minutes or so, watch a contest. Now this is a key difference probably between an individual and team sport. Individual, that for 9 minutes is all about them. Team sport, for 70 minutes, players on the ball maybe are involved for 4 or 5 minutes, potentially. So they just want to see that 4 or 5 minutes. They probably don't really care. Some of them probably won't really care about that other 66. Okay, so very different here. 9 minutes we sit down and watch it. The coach identifies the tactical areas to change. That's their role, and they'll know what the tactics were, what they delivered, what they could have done. And then the analysts are introduced to the specific elements of that bout. And then the boxer leaves 2 or 3 key pieces of information, nothing more. Even in case of someone like Michael Conlon, the current world champion, he probably has 6 or 7 different pieces to work on, and he's the best at that weight. So there's always, doesn't matter what level you're at, you've won a world medal, Olympic medals, there's always something you can improve upon, and that's important, that idea, continuous performance improvement. Now, there's a lot in this. This is a sort of a one-pager that we'll sit down and go through, and I won't go through it in a whole lot of detail, but I just wanted to show up so people have an idea. I'll go through each table in just quite briefly, but the idea being our numbers across the top are important, but also what we're trying to do is visualize the information that we're collecting. So bottom left-hand corner is the timing of landed punches. So you can clearly see, first round that person was dominant, they started well in the second round, third round was a little bit, probably not quite optimum. If we move on, I'll show you these in a little bit more detail. As we look at feints thrown, punches thrown, what we're looking for here is, this is a high volume puncher, we're looking for, the accuracy is important. 20% is our basis. So I would look through this and say, right, okay, first, second round, good. The last minute of the second round probably needs improvement. Third round, we'll focus in on that. What did you do? Why did your accuracy drop? What was the situation? What could you have done better? Okay, we look at punch types thrown. What you're potentially looking, no matter the style, contest, whatever it is, jabs, you want about 50% of your total punches being jabs. In this case, we have 155 out of 319, which is in and around what we're looking for. Then we look at landed punches. So in this particular case, as you look, on the left side is the punches they've scored, on the right side is what they've conceded. So they've won this contest 42-20. 15 punches coming from the backhand. Now, we look at it like that, and it looks all well and good. I've actually got to stare and say, okay, I understand that. But we display it in a different way, and this is the whole idea of displaying and visualizing our information. What we've got here is a pie chart. Everything above the line lands in the head. Everything below the line lands to the body. Left side is left hand, of course, so coming from that left side. This is your target in front of you, and you've landed. So what does that look like over 5 rounds? So when we look here, we see the prominent scoring punch is of 20. There was that jab to the head, okay, and backhand to the body on the bottom, and also left hooks. So this is a typical, this contest is a World Series of Boxing, so it's over 5 rounds. What we're looking at here is, so the total for that 5 rounds. Now if we look at first round, we can then start to, right, so what we're happening here, so again, left hooks, backhands are the main scoring punch as we progress. Backhand was still important, but it was working a little bit more to the body because a few more body scores. Then third round, right, so the idea you work the body, it opens up the head. Well, the third round, we've got more head punches. Landed to the head, okay? But what we look at, so over time we can start to look at patterns within this. And what's really interesting, if we look at, this is the pattern for all 5 rounds. This is the first round. I'm just going to flick between them. Should do. All 5, first round. All 5, first round. How similar is that? There's patterns in there in the first round. People are at their best at their first round. So we focus our attention on that. Okay, so looking at numbers doesn't really tell you that, but looking at it like this, that's the message that comes out straight away. Okay. There's so much happening in the contest. Different styles, everyone probably knows, southpaw, orthodox, left-handed, right-handed, different types, 6 different types. High tempo to individual, what we're looking for, universal boxer. Not many of those around. We're fortunate enough to probably 2 in the Irish squad, Katie and Michael Conlon. Universal boxers, they can fight at any style, at any distance, which is exactly what you want because people don't know what to expect. Key variables the coach is looking at, there's so much happening in the ring at any given time. What distance they're attacking at, how do they prepare that attack, principal type of defence, what's the intensity and work rate, how do they use their opportunities? So if they have a chance to attack, and sometimes they don't, they'll wonder, well, the coach will look at that, well, you had an opening there you didn't take. That comes out in the video. What tactics are employed? What's important here is I understand that not everything is easily measurable, and that's really important. We can't measure everything, but we measure what's accurate and reliable. And actually of these 2 pieces, what we're looking at now, we're looking at distance and work rate. And in and around a phase-by-phase analysis of the attack. So we're moving beyond that sort of one-pager into something that's looking at breaking it down phase by phase. That's kind of where we're moving towards. Okay? So that's kind of an overview. That's boxing in 15 minutes. Over to Denise now.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, I think that was a very interesting insight in terms of the world of elite sport. I'm going to take it absolutely back down to scratch. The first thing to say here today is that every one of you is an analyst. Every coach is an analyst inherently. You must analyse to be able to diagnose. The development of your skill set and how good you are at it is something that is up to yourselves. Some people are better than others. The guy that can spot and fix. So this is a little exercise that really could help you develop your analysis skills. So at the very simplest level, take the video, watch it back. We know that about 60 to 70% of coaches who are using analysis are just using stats. Stats don't show you behaviours. They don't give you the context. So guys, watch the video at its simplest level. To be more sophisticated then, notate the video. If you do, and there's a notational sheet in your pack there for if you want. Basically, it'll give you clarity. You'll understand the process so that when you do give, maybe if you get somebody like Alan or you get an analyst, that you can give them very clear instructions about what you want and you are driving the process, as opposed to getting people in who are going to tell you what you should be analysing. Okay? Now, so if you're starting from scratch, the most important place to start from, again, let's reiterate, is your philosophy of play. What does good look like? And I know that boxing explored that in an enormous depth. So, for example, if you're playing a long ball to a marquee forward, you have Joe Canning, you have Michael Murphy, you're going to try and play for the 20 minutes of long ball into them because, you know, it only has to work once or twice. If that's the game you're playing, think about what your stats will look like from that, because you're going to have a lot of turnovers, because any team worth their salt is going to, they're going to stick a sweeper in front of them. So you'd expect that, but remember, it only has to work once or twice. You have a low percentage of attacks retained. So you need to understand what, and it's about, I suppose, your literacy around what to expect, what not to expect. What you should, your payoff, what you should be looking for behaviour-wise are your strong runners off the ball. You need to be creating goal chances. You need, to be winning penalties. You need to be putting those guys, the sweepers, under pressure. If you're not, then you need to reevaluate that tactic. If you don't have a Michael Murphy, well then maybe that's not the game to play. Okay, think of a different tactic. So, in terms of the second stage is to define what you're going to measure. So if you are playing a long ball into a Canning or whoever, you need clarity into, can you count the number of balls in and then sort of see, what percentage you're winning or losing and what would good look like. You need to define that. And it doesn't matter what your definition is, and if it doesn't agree with mine, it's just irrelevant. What matters is that you apply your definition consistently, and that your players understand what it is, and that the management and everybody's on the same page with it. So whatever your definition is, you need it to be applied consistently, or else you are going to struggle with reliable stats. You need to then watch the video. Use a note taker. Design your own. Just get a pen, a piece of paper out. Note the times and put your coaching comments with it. So it was a shot, it was missed at a certain time, and it's such an about. And I could talk to him because it just was maybe a bit rushed, or a fella's tackle is just a lazy. He didn't get the near hand in. Whatever it happens to be. Formulate your coaching points around that. So this is the analysis, and you guys are all analysts. This is what you do. Okay, and the key thing here is coach diagnosis. Get your coaching points, your positive, your negative, and decide on your action plan. And the action plan is about an intervention, making something happen. I have a clip. We're all Operation Transformation. It's January. We're all going to lose a few pounds, and we all need to lose it. So Jimmy here needs to lose a few pounds. If you look at his stats here, 20 stone, he's 40. His BMI is 40. His waist is whatever. But guys, if we tell him he's fat, it's not going to change anything. How many times are you thumping tables? We're conceding too many frees. We're doing this, we're doing that. You must put the coaching points in here. Okay, stats alone do not affect change. Coaches affect change. Okay, you need to take what you've learned and put it into your coaching plans. Design your drills around that to address the problems. So that's a big, big message, actionable coaching points. Okay, evaluating your practice then. So this is the sort of second step in terms of looking reflective practice in terms of all of the coach literature. If we look at what makes an expert coach versus a mediocre coach, reflective practice. The coaches who think through do their pre-mortems and their post-mortems, and they reevaluate what they do. They're constantly looking, they're constantly trying to innovate. We're stealing stuff from boxing, I'm stealing stuff from wherever I can get to give me an edge. Those are the coaches that are the innovators. They are the experts. They are the leaders in their field. This is a tool that should help you maybe get an idea around evaluating your practice. So it's basically a checklist of questions. So here it is. Checklist of questions with two purposes. So the first purpose is to allow coaches who use a lot of analysis to audit and evaluate your practice. So if you're answering no to anything, there's room to improve. The second purpose of it is to encourage the coaches who are new to analysis to ask the right questions and make sure that you are driving the process. Okay? So I am going to take two examples, two questions, and have a look at them, and then we're going to invite maybe two more from the floor, that's pretty much it then. So we'd like to open it up to you guys. So I'm going to give you a wee minute to have a look at that, and then I'm going to go through a couple of questions. So can you just have a look at that sheet now in front of you? I'll give you a minute to have a look. Okay, I'm going to do two. I'm going to try and incorporate plenty of stuff into them. And then I'll maybe get you guys to shout up if you have any ones that you want, particularly to maybe Alan's opinion or mine. So the first one I'm going to pick is number 8. And the question here is it clear which member of the coaching team is going to liaise with the analyst for planning and at critical times during matches and half-time? Okay, so why is this important? Guys, it is pointless having stats if they can't be communicated effectively. Whether that's during the week, whether that is in the middle of a game. Okay, so there are times when I've had stats that I know. For example, we had a midfielder after 12 minutes in an All-Ireland semi-final hadn't touched the ball. Okay, really worth getting that message down. This fella hasn't had the ball in his hand. We need to move him. We need to get him involved in the game. Key player. But we knew from the opposition stats that his player wasn't doing any damage, but we just wanted to get him into the game. He was a key player for us. Okay, we need to get those messages and test your system. And just a note on that, if you are using an inter-county setup, put your analyst to the coach on a different frequency than your physios or your hurleymen or whatever it happens to be. Okay, just keep it separate so that they have that channel of communication on their own. You need to ensure the appropriate volume of information is communicated. So it's going to be different what you get at half-time than at the end of the season. At the end of the season, you're looking for the stuff that Alan was looking at, the trends, the bigger picture, the longer term stuff. Okay, and if you're with a team for a few years, that's the sort of stuff you should be looking for. So the analyst will have a large volume of information, the coach needs a manageable volume of information, and you guys need to decide who is the filter. How are you going to get that? So if I have a huge amount of stuff, how do I get that into the 1 or 2 points that the coach needs at half-time, or does he need the whole lot maybe, or she later on? The other question I'm going to look at is question number 17. Do you feel confident to sit down with a player and discuss their strengths and weaknesses at various times in the season? Okay, are you happy to do that? And Anthony used to kill me. I'm all for one-on-ones. And you know, the week before the game, he's no one-on-ones, no way, not to be talking to the subs that why am I not on? And and you need to get beyond that conversation, okay? And this is something that you don't do the week before a game. This is something you build into your practice. So why do you do it? Well, guys, how else are you going to have 15 better players than you have at the minute? Okay, unless you can help every single one of those players improve, then, you know, what's your job as a coach? And video is often clearer than words. How do you do it? So, plan the key messages. This is the pre-mortem stuff. Think about it in advance. Taking into account your player. So, who's the fella coming in the door to you? Okay, is he your best player who's maybe off his game? Think about it. What's the message for that player? Sometimes, and Alan was an interesting one, sitting down for that 9 minutes so they watch the whole bout. Rather than looking at the good stuff and the bad stuff, sometimes if you just pull all the involvements into a 4 or 5 minute clip, it's quite a nice way. There's no good and bad, it's just your plays. It's it's much less threatening than good and bad. And I don't like the words good and bad to be used at all. Ideally, your player will have looked at that beforehand, so that makes it even better. You know, guys, we have all sorts of technology now, Facebook or Dropbox or YouTube. Get the clips out beforehand, which means and you can have a very informal chat in the dressing room. Alan, did you see those clips? What did you think? And Alan says, oh, I thought it a great game. And you're like, oh, okay. Or Alan says, no, gosh, no, I was really disappointed. And you're like, gosh, you know. So it allows you to calibrate, but it gives the player ownership. And the other key thing, and there was an awful lot of talk last night about the values of the GAA and inclusivity. Guys, record your training and your challenge games, because that's often the only video that your peripheral players have. You must show that you're interested in their development as well. Okay, those guys, they're the future of your team. Okay, when the top players have retired, those are the guys that are coming in next. Okay, we've about 5 minutes to open the floor. We'll come back then and hopefully show a video at the end. Has anybody any questions here with regard to what you've seen in front of you there? Can we get somebody brave to start it off?
Anyone answer no to any of these questions?
Yeah, way over there, Alan.
There you go. No, not necessarily. I think
What's that?
we've probably any questions in reality.
Oh, anything, just go on, yeah.
But what I would urge people to do, this tool, as we developed it, there's so much in it. There really is. And it covers pretty much every element of the analyst process and how the coach inputs into it. So I would really encourage people to read this and ask yourself the question, am I doing it effectively? And that idea, can I do it better? But I think we can open up to any questions at all that is there. We're happy enough to do that.
We'll
just take one more from...
Yeah, another one.
Just a question there about, say, underage or juvenile teams. A lot of these games are being videoed now, formally or informally or whatever. And I'm just wondering, you know, you can get too complex and too complicated with all of this, and it's excellent, and it's obviously practice at an inter-county level, at senior under 21 minor at this stage, and development squads. But at a club level, you know, if a game is videoed, how simple should you go, or how basic should you go? Is it 2 or 3 stats or categories that you should give feedback to the team, or I mean, you can...
Okay, I'll come back to the philosophy. So there's a time and a place for this. And guys, this is the 1 or 2%. If your team's not fit, you're nothing. You know, if you haven't got good players and you haven't, you know, got good raw material, you're nothing. So this is the bit to bring you, you know, this is like, look at Alan and their role in boxing. It is to make you that bit of world class. In underage, you need to be extremely careful. What you're trying to do at that level is just create an awareness, to try and create a tactical understanding. So you're not giving these fellas lorry loads of stats, or that's nonsense. You know, pull it back to saying, you know, what are the basic skills? How many blocks can we get in today, boys? Can we count that? You know, how many shots? And let's, you know, not worried about the outcome. How many shots can we get? Well, God, that was brilliant. Now, where are we taking them from? Okay, you know, and let them, you know, come up, but think about the numbers in a context that's meaningful and is sensible. Okay, so that would be, I don't know, Alan, would you agree on that?
Well, I think, yeah, keep it simple. You know, 1 or 2 key pieces, and I would almost probably move away from numbers altogether. Watch the video and ask them what they think.
Yeah.
You know, and that's your, for probably, that would probably be the definitely a starting point. And I would even think 6, 9, 12 months into it. After that, then you might look at some numbers, and some people take to it better than others. But video is always your starting point, you know.
We have a yellow light flashing at us here.
Yeah. Okay.
So what I was going to say, Alan, maybe you'd do a closing for us, and then we'll play our video.
Right. Okay. Ooh. Yeah, okay, so we just kind of wanted to break down what is a really, can be a pretty chaotic process and a really dynamic environment and of Asian sports. I want to break it down, the process that we think is most important. If you ask yourself why am I bothering and why am I doing it, then you start you start in solid footing. Video, as we mentioned, as your question alluded to, that's your starting point. Numbers alone only tell you part of the message, and as soon as you look at numbers, you would say, well, why, what happened? Without having a video as a reference, you've no way of knowing. And then you just want to bring that learning into action. And that's the important piece, and that's what the analyst is really, really keen to explore, to work with the coach to do that. Okay, one other thing is, for anyone who's interested in this, there's continuous professional development in the area in Ireland is really, really limited. But there's an International Society of Performance Analysis of Sport. There's actually a 2-day workshop in Carlow in March. So for anyone who's interested, pop on the website and come along. Some really good speakers. Okay, we have a video
just to introduce the context of this video. There's 2 points to make about it. This video is from Dublin Hurlers in 2011. It was a big breakthrough year for us in terms of getting from, a kind of an early team to actually, we won the league and we made it. So it's also nice and old, so it'll hopefully not interfere with anybody's current preparation. And the second thing to say is, if anybody's from Clare, Anthony has said he doesn't want any text about this. Okay, so thanks very much for everybody, and thanks for your attention.
Thanks. Anyone who wants to ask us any more questions, just feel free to come up or around for the next few hours.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.